I've been doing triathlons for 2 years, and it's safe to say that this is the biggest race of my life. The most I've ever trained, the fastest I've ever been, and the most nervous I've ever felt.
Going to space is appalling.
Look at that man.
Oh, I hate IGA. IGA is so
The day before a big race is always a surreal experience. It doesn't feel quite real, and there are so many thoughts going through your head at the same time. But I tried to keep myself busy with an athlete briefing in the morning, a shakeout run and bike, and then I headed down to Lac Tremblant to do a 1,000 meter shakeout swim with my dad. Water temperature that day was perfect, it was warm and the water felt smooth, and so this added to my confidence going into race day. Afterwards, I dropped my bike off in transition, as at Ironman races you leave your bike overnight before race day, and I always make sure to deflate my tires in case the air expands due to the heat increasing overnight and then they can pop.
In terms of my race plan, I didn't want to adjust my race because I was sick. I felt like I came all this way and I just wanted to race it as I wasn't sick. So in terms of the swim is a 1,900 meter loop going around Mont Tremblant Lake. And as you can't really look at your pace in the water, I wanted to just go at a relative effort of 7 or 8 out of 10, which for me would be a mid to lower threshold. In terms of Ironman swims, they're self-seated, which means that you place yourself within groups that will be swimming the same pace that you expect to be swimming at. And what I find for these races is that I underestimate my pace and that other people overestimate their pace, and so I put myself into the 145 to 150 minute per 100 meter group. And then for the swim, I hope to take 1 caffeinated gel before and 1 regular gel afterwards, just to keep my nutrition topped up while I'm in the swim. The bike is a 90-kilometer out and back along the highway and then through some mountain roads. And this has about 900 meters of elevation gain, so it's fairly hilly for a triathlon course. This was my first race with a power meter and a triathlon bike and an aero helmet, so I had no idea what my power would translate to in terms of speed, and I've never experienced pacing myself really in a race, and so this would all be a first. My hope was that I'd be able to average around 230 watts for the race, as this is what I did in training with 4 by 30 minutes at 230 watts. And I hope to keep my heart rate under 160 so I'm in zone 3 and not going into threshold. And I hope that this wattage would translate to 37 or 38 kilometers an hour, which would translate to a 226 or 222 bike split. In terms of nutrition, I was aiming for 90 grams of carbs per hour. This was mostly achieved through liquids, as I would do 5 scoops of Scratch carb mix in a bottle, as well as 1.5 scoops of Scratch hydration mix, which would give me about 500 milligrams of electrolytes, as well as 101.4 grams of carbs per bottle, so over a 2 hour and 20 minute bike split, plus a pack of gummies, this would be about 90 grams of carbs per hour. Then in terms of the run, it's a half marathon out and back along some trailways. It's about 130 meters of elevation gain, with most of it being downhill on the way out and then uphill on the way back. I was hoping to keep it under 410 per kilometer because it was hilly, so I was lowering my expectations a little bit. And then my nutrition plan was to have a morning gel every 5 kilometers, so 25 grams per gel, as well as grabbing a flask that I kept in my transition, which had some scratch hydration mix for some more electrolytes, liquids, and 30 grams of carbs. And obviously I wanted to come under 435 overall, as the title suggests, but I also really wanted to qualify for the Ironman 70.3 World Championships this fall. And so I was hoping to come top 5 overall, but that's not really in my control, and so I wasn't worrying about that too much, but it was a hope. And so after all of this and setting up my gear for tomorrow, prepping my carbs, prepping my breakfast, and getting everything ready so tomorrow morning is seamless, there's nothing much else I can do. So I had a pasta with red sauce and chicken for dinner with my family, and then decided to call it an early night at around 8 p.m. to get ready for my 4 a.m. wake up tomorrow morning.
Keep your integrity. You can't go on a mass production journey. I mean, you can't just become a little cog in a big machine.
Hey, you only wrote this for the money, didn't you?
What's the matter with you? Money isn't everything. You think so?
Hey, my name's Gabriel, and welcome to Tremblant 435, episode 1. If you're new, you're probably somewhat
Welcome to episode 2 of Tremblant 435. I've never raced a half. Welcome to Tremblant 435, episode 4. Let's get it!
Welcome to another episode of Tremblant 435. Today will be less about training and more about
the first one that's like 30. Wait, that was already? No, you'll have to wait till the episode.
another episode of Tremblant 435.
Tremblant 435.
Another episode of Tremblant 435. To Tremblant 435.
Oh, there he is.
I said goodbye to my parents, emptied my system in the porta potty, and then had a 10-minute walk over to the race start. You could feel the energy building. You could feel everyone getting excited as you all crowded into this beach. And so 7 a.m. comes around. I start to walk slowly towards the front as I see the faster swimmers go off, and then I run for my life. My first thoughts of the swim was that it was freezing. The water was way colder than it was in my shake-up the other day, probably because it was cloudy. And so I spent the first few hundred meters just trying to warm up. I started off going all out over the first 500 meters, and then I started to slow down because I realized I couldn't sustain this for the entire swim. My sighting went really well. I didn't get lost on the course. I was able to sight on a mountain on the way out, and then going back into town, you could see the clock tower. I tried to draft, but I wasn't able to maintain being on anyone's feet for too long. And so after getting into a rhythm, staying at that perceived effort of about 7 or 8, I felt strong coming out of the water and was able to run the last 70 meters of the swim as the water gets really shallow. And so as I came up on the stairs onto the transition area, I come out with a 35-15 minute Ironman 7.3 swim, which is the fastest I've ever done by 3 minutes. The run into T1 is a long one, it's almost a kilometer, and so I made sure to strip down my wetsuit to my waist so I would be able to get the pants off as I got into my transition zone. As I put my helmet on, I got stopped by stewards on the way out of transition because apparently you have to have your helmet buckled up going out of transition, and I didn't know this. And so I tried to buckle my helmet up as I ran, but this didn't work and I couldn't get it on, so I had to stop on the side of the road, buckle up my helmet, which took about 10 to 20 seconds, and then continue, so that was a big waste of time, and I had a really slow transition. After getting out onto the bike for a few kilometers and getting my feet into my shoes, I felt a lot better, but that transition left a lot to be desired, and so I came out of it at 3:53. Going out on the bike, the first 15 kilometers are downhill, going out to the highway on some small roads, and my heart rate was skyrocketing. The highest your heart rate will ever be in a race is coming out of the swim onto the bike, and that was true for me. My heart rate was in the 160s, going up to 175 or even 180, and so I was really concerned that this was either my sickness acting up and this would be consistent across the whole bike, or if this was just my body acclimating from going to swimming to biking, as it usually does. And then at kilometer 5, my bottle between my arms flew out after hitting a bump on the hill, and so that was 100 grams of carbs that I lost and would now have to make up throughout the race. As I got out to the highway and got onto the highway, I started to get into a rhythm. I was passing everyone on the bike, which always feels good when you're a slow swimmer. As the highway going out is mostly uphill, I was averaging 35 to 36 kilometers an hour, which felt slow, but I hoped that I would be able to make up the speed going on the way back. And I made sure to grab a gel at the aid station to start to make up those last 100 grams of carbs. But then as I go to the turnaround, I come back, I realize I need to start making up some speed as I'm still only averaging 35 or 36 kilometers an hour. And so as I go back down the downhills, I tuck into my aero position and I let it rip. The only time I had to slow down was at the aid station at the 50 kilometer mark, where I had to grab a water bottle to make up that last liquids, as well as 2 more Morton gels to then top it up with 75 grams of carbs versus the 101 that I lost. And then going downhill, I had 3 5K splits at over 40 kilometers an hour and 1 5K split at 51 kilometers an hour. So I felt like I was flying going back into the small roads. And as you get back to the village, you go through this chute where you have cheering crowds on either side of you, and it feels like you're in the Tour de France, where it's like you can't even hear yourself. And as I was at the front of the pack and I was one of the only cyclists there, it was a really, really cool and incredible experience going through that chute. But then after that, you go into the hilly portion, and this is where it started to fall apart. My legs were feeling great on the bike, but as I started to go uphill and get out of the saddle, my quads started to lock up. And this is something I've never experienced in training or racing before. I've never had cramps, and so this scared the crap out of me. And so as I had been running in air position the whole time, my legs never fully extended, and so this was a surprise when extending them fully to climb. It was also confusing because I was averaging only 220 watts the whole race, and I was doing 4 by 30 minutes of 230 in training, and so I expected that 220 should be completely doable. And as I was climbing, as this last stretch of the bike course was only climbing, I could see my average speed drop from 38 to 37 to 36 kilometers an hour. As there was nothing else I could do, all I did was climb, maintain my speed at 220 watts, and try and stretch out my legs as much as I can while climbing. And as I reach the turnaround, I just make sure to descend as fast as possible, stretch out my legs as much as I can on the descents. And so I round back through the chute, which was incredible, get off my bike, and just get ready to fight some demons on this run after a 2:25:48 bike split. After getting off the bike, T2 went really well. I was able to get my feet out of my shoes while I was on the bike, and then I was able to get into transition really quickly with my helmet on this time, grab all my stuff, and was out in 1 minute and 12 seconds, which was one of the fastest T2s of the day. I also knew that I'd be slightly underfueled because I dropped my bottle, so I made sure to pick up my soft flask, which had my carb and electrolyte mix, to sort of make up a little bit more on the run. However, as soon as I got out of transition, my legs locked up on the run. I felt like I was waddling. I had to heel strike and sort of run in a weird position to not lock up my quads. And that, combined with the first few kilometers being really hilly, I settled into 4:30s per kilometer, which was way slower than I wanted to and what I was intended to run at. After about 3 kilometers, my legs started to loosen up a little bit. I fell into a rhythm. My aerobic system felt fine, but my legs hurt so badly that I wasn't able to run at the pace I wanted to, and so I settled into 4:15s and 4:20s, going into the long, slow downhill through the trails. And throughout all this, I was making sure to grab a cup of water at every aid station to down, as well as having a Morton gel every 5 kilometers to keep up my carb intake. And so after the first 10K, I felt steady but not strong, and then turning around, I felt like I could maintain this pace coming back home, but then I forgot that the whole thing was uphill on the way back. And so coming up the slow incline on the trails, I dropped even further into 4:30s per kilometer. But after coming into kilometers 16 and 17, right before the big hills at the end, I started to feel dizzy and a bit of lightheadedness. And I wasn't sure if I was dehydrated or underfueled, but I decided to walk the last 2 aid stations to just drink a lot of water, pour some on my head, and get refueled. And while I was doing this, a lot of people were passing me, but the aid station volunteers were incredible. There was a bunch of kids at the last 2 aid stations who were handing out water, and they kept yelling at me, keep going, you're almost there. And that gave me a little bit of fire just to keep running up those last few hills to the end. At this point, I also was looking at my watch and I saw that 4:35 would be out of the picture, but I knew that if I really pushed the last few kilometers, I could maybe go sub 4:38. And then as I rounded into the village, left the trails behind, as well as seeing my family, I scented the last few kilometers at 4 minutes per kilometer and 4:11 per kilometer. I think initially I was disappointed by 4:38. I was really sad that I couldn't give it more on the run, but it was bittersweet because the reality of the sickness and what could have been was in the back of my mind all weekend. but I sort of had to push these aside and realize that this is just racing. You build up for 21 weeks and you don't know how the day's going to turn out, and I really think I made the most out of the day that I was given. And now the race all wrapped up, all there was to do now was wait and to see how the World Championship spots rolled down. And let's just say, my season's not over yet.